Belichick and the New England Patriots are in town this week for joint practices with Matt LaFleur and the Packers, which kicked off today at the Don Hutson Center. And while there weren't any fights, as we often see in joint practices, there were a few instances that maybe with a second day of joint practices tomorrow, we might see something break out. For one, Christian Watson was in a little bit of a tussle with somebody, but ultimately he walked away from the situation before it escalated. And then Dontavion Wicks was a little bit of a ping pong ball between two defensive backs who were gunners on a punt return rep. And he ended up getting knocked down and had a few words with one of the players. I believe it was Jalen Mills from the Patriots. And ultimately, Watson came in to calm him down, which really commendable for Watson to have that kind of leadership as a second-year guy and a young guy at that too. Meanwhile, on the Patriots side of the ball, we saw Zeke Elliott in a Patriots uniform for the first time, being signed earlier this week by the Patriots. The former Cowboys running back is really trying to make a resurgence of his career in New England. When asked about what he can bring to the Patriots team, Bill Belichick remained, his usual non-committal self, essentially saying, "We'll see." But we see him here warming up a little bit. Then eventually, in a moment, we see him taking some pass routes on a little bit of an angle route out of the backfield for Mac Jones. Unfortunately, there was a laundry list of guys that sat out practice today. Most of them seemingly for injuries, a lot of precautionary things, but so many that I literally need a note card to be able to do this. So we've got Stokes, Bakhtiari, Tenuta, Davis, obviously, Gaines, Jones, Nichols, Goodson, Clark, Carpenter, Campbell, Melton, and Ballantyne. So with that, for instance, we saw the typical first unit offensive line when David Bakhtiari isn't out there. So that was Josh Nyman, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, JRJ, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. Also out there in a starting capacity on the defensive side with that first team unit was Tarvarius Moore in the defensive backfield opposite Savage. So seeing a bit of that rotation again. And Tarvarius Moore had a pretty nice game against the Bengals in week 1 of the preseason. So really seeing a little bit more of how that safety position is rounding out. And Matt LaFleur actually spoke highly of Anthony Johnson Jr. and his play in the game in particular as well. So he's got a lot to learn as a young man, going in there, really coming into his second season playing safety and having not only that, but the fact that he's making the leap from college ball to the NFL. So we'll see if he continues to progress there as well and potentially make some plays moving forward. Last little note on that, Rashawn Gary is out there practicing, but he's still limited just to individual work, kind of going through drills, no teamwork as of yet, but it is a positive sign. So far, he hasn't skipped a beat and had any setbacks after a string of about a week worth of practices now. A few notes to kind of really overall recap some of the practice. The Patriots' run defense was pretty stout throughout the day. We had a tough go of running the ball against that unit. Really, the Patriots' defense is known as an outstanding unit, likely to be somewhere in the top 10 of the NFL as far as defensive units go. So the fact that Jordan Love, who ultimately had a great day out there, was able to put that together, especially with the blitzes that were being called, the last minute shifts of personnel, and then changing of different personnel packages against him, really is encouraging by the fact that he was able to keep his calm, and really he ended up going 7 for 10 overall on the day in teamwork. So not a bad thing, with really 2 of those being throwaways in the 2-minute drill. So a very nice day from Jordan Love out there, getting the ball out of his hand, nice spiral, and carrying on with that. Another note was on one of the plays, Jaden Reed ended up getting a little bit shaken up. He was going down to make a diving catch but came up a little bit lame, kind of clutching at his chest. Hopefully it was just that he kind of knocked the wind out of himself, but we'll see and kind of monitor how that goes. He ended up sitting out some of the 2-minute periods after that happened, at least from Andy Herman's account. So we'll see whether or not that's something that lingers. I assume it's mostly just to be precautionary because they do have big plans for Jayden Reed this year, so they don't want to risk him so early on in the season. Rasul Douglas had a handful of near picks. One of them, he made a great play, dropping down out of his coverage, just instinctually, veteran savvy kind of showing, and came down and undercut a route on tight end, not Austin Hooper, on one of the Patriots tight ends, and ultimately should have probably had the pick, but couldn't quite come up with it, and then had another similar play later that he nearly had a pick on. As far as kicking goes, I know a lot of people will probably fixate on the fact that, we'll talk about it a little bit coming up, but Carlson missed a 40-yarder in the 2-minute drill and had a few misses in some of the teamwork, but in his individual kicking period, he did go 5 for 5, hitting on a range of kicks from 41 up into the 50s. So positive sign there. There was an article that I can't recall who wrote it, but it was with Packers News, I believe, that talked about the fact that he is encouraged by the fact that his misses have been consistently wide right. Not that he wants to miss. Obviously, he wants to make every kick and really needs to be making a higher percentage than what he has, which is somewhere around 67 or 68% of kicks so far. But the fact that it's consistently missing in the same direction shows that there's a particular part of his process that is kind of leading him there, and he thinks it's a bit of nerves, and he's rushing through his process. So his approach is too fast, and he needs to slow down, because then his momentum coming from left to right is carrying him through, and it's really reflecting on the ball as it comes off his foot, which is why it's pushing wide right. So the fact that Anders Carlson is optimistic about that and really has an idea of what he needs to fix is a little bit reassuring. I mean, he's a young kicker. He's got a live leg. Let's just get him, out there, settled in, used to, the big show, the bright lights of the NFL. And I think he'll settle in nicely as the year progresses. And then last, not so great note that I had was Royce Newman has continued to struggle. He got just manhandled on a couple of reps out there today, and it's just progressively trending in the wrong direction for Royce Newman. So I'm a little more concerned about some of the interior offensive line depth with guys like, Newman not performing well. I'm curious at what point are they going to make a move and, bring somebody else in just to see if they have somebody else that they can develop at that position. But that's some of the overall highlights from the practice. Before we get into the team drill period and talking about some of those 2-minute drills, if you could just go down and click like on the video. It does a lot to help the channel and the algorithm and get this out to more Packers fans that are looking for this kind of content. And if it's your first time here, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. As we get into the team period, the first team in the 2-minute period, we saw initial 20-yard completion on a slant to Romeo Doubs, followed by an incompletion targeting Doubs again. Then they hit Watson on a crosser, another completion to Samori Toure, and then pressure from the defense from the Patriots forced a throwaway from Jordan Love, which stopped the clock, thankfully. Then they ended up getting another big pickup on a slant to Romeo Doubs again, which brought us to 1st and 10 on the 25 with about 11 seconds left on the clock. From there, Love hit Doubs on a quick out for about 5 yards, which he was able to get out of bounds and stop the clock with 7 seconds left. Then they ended up just snapping the ball, burning the clock a little bit, and Love threw it away, just really to kind of get rid of some clock there, which set the Packers up for a 40-yard field goal, which I previously mentioned that Anders Carlson missed. So the offense moved the ball very well, was efficient with this, 2-minute period, set them up to score outstandingly, but unfortunately the kick couldn't quite sail through. It seemed like the wind probably had a factor in it as well, because it sounded like a few of the kicks in the team period really just kind of like you got too much air under it, and then the wind just stifled the ball and it really just stopped dead in its tracks, coming up short. So that's possibly what contributed to it a bit, but ultimately on that period, Jordan Love went 5 for 7 for 47 yards, which pretty efficient, again, with those 2 incompletions being throwaways. One of them, really just kind of evading the rush and then throwing it away due to pressure, and then the other one really just there to burn some clock before a field goal attempt for the win. When the defensive unit got in for a 2-minute drill, they started off with a near sack from Kingsley Enagbare, immediately followed by a surefire sack from Carl Brooks, who has really just found himself in the backfield a lot in team drills recently. Then the Patriots quarterback Jones had a few completions, ended up scrambling for about a 10-yard gain on another play, which he slid down and was able to spike the ball, threw one more incompletion, setting them up similarly for that 40-yard field goal. But Nick Folk for the Patriots made the field goal, so the Patriots won that period. Also of note, in a separate session for the first team defense, they held up very nicely against the Patriots on 5 attempts through the air from within the 10-yard line and did not let them score on that. So great play overall from the Packers defense. Got a lot of pressure on the Patriots offense. Even had some guys like McDuffie coming up and run fitting nicely. Like I said earlier, Rasul Douglas had an outstanding day. Jones tried to challenge Valentine one time deep, and he was able to just really stick in coverage on the receiver, and there was effectively no chance for them to make that play. So the defense performed nicely today overall. But as we look at a little bit more of, some of the video clips we have here, everybody's seen this probably by now, but an absolute bomb down the left sideline on a corner route to Christian Watson for somewhere between 70 and 80 yards from Love to Watson. Watson started off lined up in the slot, ended up getting a free release, which you just cannot afford to do to Christian Watson in general, but especially in the slot where he's likely matched up against, a less speedy defensive back or linebacker even. But he was able to break free, got out there, and it was Christian Gonzalez that was in coverage on him, the 17th overall pick of this year's draft, who's a fast guy in and of himself. But Love dropped the ball right over Christian Gonzalez's shoulder to Christian Watson, who, if he was able to stay in bounds, took that all the way down for somewhere between a 70 or 80 yard touchdown, as I said. Just gorgeous pass. He ended up looking that same direction on another play later, going deep to Watson. Perfect ball right between the corner and the safety. Somehow, I don't know exactly what it was, but Watson rather, ended up not quite being able to grasp it and missed it. There was a similar play like that to Dobbs later in the game, or later in the practice as well, that, just beautiful ball from Love to these guys going deep. And he's really showing his arm talent, throwing specifically down the field, which we've seen a good bit of in practice clips, but also even that ball in the Bengals game that ended up ultimately being incomplete. Like, he is putting the ball in a nice place for his receivers to be able to go out and make a play on them down the field. But Dobbs ultimately dropped that other one as well. Luke Musgrave also got a lot of run in the red zone as well. As you see here, a bit of a seam route that Jordan Love hits him nicely, goes up and gets that ball for a touchdown. And then this one, which is a bit of a fun wrinkle, you see him ending up coming across the formation in motion. And then a little shovel pass here. He ends up picking up good yardage, almost about 10 yards. But just another way the Packers can get the ball into his hands, as he's a playmaker type. But yeah, like as I said, Jordan Love had a pretty impressive day, especially for, all of the things that the Patriots were throwing at him. Started off hot, had a little bit of a lull in the middle as he was kind of coping with some of the changes and the pressure that he was seeing, but then finished strong at the end. But, we'll see how he stacks this up again tomorrow as the Patriots are back for another day of joint practices with the Packers.